So folks, today we're going to take a look at this one book that I've loved reading. It's been a fantastic book, highly recommend it. If you all were fans of F1 back in the 80s and 90s, how could you miss Benetton? This book here, I would say, is probably going to end up being the definitive book on Benetton and the Formula One team. Covers the whole history from the beginning to the very end whenever it was bought out by Renault in 2000. The cool thing with this is it just covers a lot of things that probably at the time we didn't really have complete optics on or full understanding on. So it's kind of the inside story of what was going on within Benetton throughout its entire history. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at it here. And inside here, they really do start at the beginning because, of course, Benetton was a big disruptor. They talk about how Benetton got started, which is very interesting, and the family today is still involved in a lot of different businesses, how they got started in the clothing ads and stuff that they used to get attention and grow their business and all that. And F1 at the time, they kind of saw as something where with an expanding clothing business, it was something where for bang for the buck in terms of sponsorship, they thought for the money they could spend, they could reach a lot of markets, and they weren't wrong. Of course, at the time, F1 sponsorship in terms of the money involved compared to today was much smaller than it is now. But they go through how they started with Tyrrell and kicked all that off and how that didn't work out, how they moved on to Alfa Romeo, which that didn't work out either. They also talk about the Toleman team and how Toleman kind of kicked off and got going and their whole history with Toleman, which is real cool. Because Toleman was really the beginning of everything in terms of the actual racing team. So there's a lot of good stuff in here on how they got that F1 team off the ground. Of course, Ayrton Senna drove for them in 1984. There's a lot of good details in here about what was going on with Senna in the background. And then on to actually buying Toleman in 1985 and kicking everything off, picking up BMW engines, signing up Gerhard Berger, going through. They ended up with their first win in 1986. So pretty cool. A lot of background details in here about what was going on at the time. And then all the way up into 1987 and changing drivers and changing engines to Ford, which actually, as it said, the Ford engine was actually pretty good, where previously with the Haas team it didn't really perform. And then Alessandro Nannini, he turned up with them in 1988, and the team started to really kind of rise. Flavio Briatore, of course, came into the picture. Nelson Piquet was signed by the team to a pretty good deal. One of the things we didn't know with Nelson Piquet at the time was that accident in 1987 really impaired his eyesight, which he didn't reveal till after his career was over. But there's some good details in here. He, of course, ended up picking up 3 wins. Johnny Herbert, the whole story with that in the background with Johnny Herbert when he first drove for Benetton. Of course, he had that horrific accident in 1988. So a lot of good details in the background. John Barnard, how he came into the picture. Benetton signing with R.J. Reynolds. And a lot of the different things that were going on with that. And then into 1992, Martin Brundle. Unfortunately, they should have probably retained Martin Brundle for 1993. But a lot of good details about Michael Schumacher and a lot of the things that were going on with that at the time. 1993, which that was a pretty good year. I still have an original 1993 poster of that exact shot right there that Benetton put out. And that's a beautiful shot. I think that was probably taken at Imola. And then all the way into 1994, which of course was quite the year in F1. Ayrton Senna passed away. There were a lot of different things going on. Pretty crazy championship. Benetton got banned a couple times. Obviously, there was the huge accident in 1994 with the fire. Goes through all the details with that into 1995. And then also, winning the championship in 95, which was pretty cool. They were really at their peak there. Pretty much that was the peak. And then, unfortunately, the inevitable kind of decline and how that all kind of unfolded. And then the Benetton family at some point pretty much is, getting to the point of the cost involved and everything going on with that. And they had kind of, spent their time in F1 and it was time to move on. And so Renault ended up purchasing the whole team and taking it to another level. And also there's a final good wrap up here with Alessandro Benetton and kind of looking back at the F1 team and kind of how proud they are of their history with F1. And they still keep many of their F1 cars today. So at the back of the book, there's a lot of results and stuff in terms of what happened. So very cool book. And I'm glad that someone went to the effort, the author here, Damian Smith, to put all this together and preserve it for history as time goes on, because Benetton has been out of the sport now for over 20 years. So it's good to see that this history has been preserved. A lot of good pictures, obviously, inside, and a lot of good history. So I think for a Formula One fan of that era, it's definitely worth a read. So folks, hope you enjoyed it. Have a good one.